Well, there's always somebody that's going to want to have, you know, a seismograph in their living room.
So I go
They
to
can
this
see what the
website,
latest earthquake looks like, why it's happening.
anywhere in the world.
Well, whatever the internet does. Same thing, you could take your AM radio and you could plug it into the computer and you could use my antenna to listen to the AM radio stations around the world through the earth.
So landers could detect signals.
Well, the
all around
next
the
step
world.
was the multiplex system to take the signals in and out of there. See, because this station has to operate in a phase relation with another station somewhere else exactly like it.
What are the potential applications of having this data? What could you do with it?
It's earthquake forecasting.
And tornadoes, volcanoes?
Well, they all make signals, but you know, the earthquake thing is what that was after.
Okay.
Just the earthquake.
Could you see kind of living maps of the Earth by kind of
Well, that's why I needed more stations for that.
how detailed a picture could you get of the inner Earth? Like how would it
Well, these things are all speculative. You know, I only talk about things that I've built.
Okay.
But that's how the stereo works. The sounds move around. Tesla had figured out a way to do it also inside the Earth, both electrically and mechanically. If you make the right mathematical function at the antennas, you can have a spot anywhere in the Earth and you can position it. It's no problem at all. That's totally mathematically and physically conceivable. But it's not built.
Yet.
No.
Eric Dolan
Right.
has not accepted that job yet.
Well, it all got it's all torn apart now, and then the parts are scattered. So that's the end of that.
The applications for this are amazing. You could sense ores in the Earth, perhaps, with additional.
Yeah, but I'm only talking about what's been built. The first thing to do is to listen to the signals and study them before you even start saying anything about them.
Okay. So
And the obvious interest is the earthquake aspect, and that's the most bizarre. Why do these signals even come about?
the predictive signals.
Yeah, and there's a whole variety of signals that come out of the Earth. All
Right, they're
kinds of
supersonic.
different sounds. There's like 9 or 10 different sounds, and they all work together. It's almost like when you close your eyes and listen to your signals, it's like you're in these rocks, and each rock makes its own sound.
Did you hear about that episode a couple months back where the Earth was howling and the sky was howling, this natural howling that happened all over the world?
No,
Okay.
but I know that happens.
Oh, it does.
There was about 6, 7 years that you couldn't go anywhere out here in the desert without hearing this induction motor noise.
Really?
Yeah, everywhere.
From a power plant?
I don't know. You just heard it everywhere. Sound like a big giant induction motor, like your refrigerator.
How does that sound like?
It's got this pulsating sound.
Like what?
Well, you have to hear it. Well, just listen to your refrigerator run.
I see. And you
Listen
could
to
hear
the hum. It constantly changes. It pulsates.
You could hear it everywhere.
It just was everywhere.
On the phone or...
No, when you were outside. You couldn't get it like these damn jets. You could never get away from the sound.
You could actually hear it.
Yeah,
Faintly.
yeah. There's places like that in the desert that do that all the time. It's noises. And then the quartz crystals in the ground do the same thing that the lander station did. They're like transducers. So they make the electricity and the sound that you can hear. So if you get in a big pile of crystal quartz type rock outcropping, and you sit there and there's a big electrical event going on inside the earth, the rocks will act like speakers and you'll hear the sounds. It's got to be quiet, real quiet. But you can hear them.
Wow. Certain rocks you could hear it.
They change their shape depending upon the electric field they're in. You put electrostatic field on a rock, it changes its shape. If you change its shape, it produces an electrostatic field.
So with landers working, anyone on the internet could have accessed live seismic data from all over the world.
Well, from that station
From that
and how it picked up all around the world.
What was its range?
What's that?
The range of landers.
Well, the range depended on how you used it. There was no definite range. The seismograph is global. It dealt with the Earth as one object. There was no distinction between separate earthquakes with this seismograph system. It was one planet. Everything that happened on the planet, the graph and the scope never stopped moving. It was like waves on the ocean. Never stopped moving. There was always jolts and surges and standing waves and the impulses made by coyotes running around out in the desert, the big rigs driving on the highway about 5-10 miles away. You'd have a little bit of that in the background.
You could hear it all.
Yeah, you could actually put on headphones and hear it.
You could hear a coyote in the desert walking.
Yeah, and well, you can tell, the coyote will walk one way, people walk a different way. The rats jumping around and all that type of stuff. If you get any wind at all, it makes it really difficult to get any signal, because this thing was ultra high sensitivity, and it was attached to these type of rocks that go 30 miles into the ground. It's attached to a rock formation that went 30 miles, one big chunk of rock into the earth. Wow. That's one of the reasons for using this geology, because this is just the gravel on the surface. That's all this is sand and gravel. It's just, we're too tiny to see it as sand and gravel, but that's all it is, massive heaps of it. But the main chunks, there's whole plates of them that stick out of the ground here. They're like slabs. They're only 10 feet wide, but they go like 50, 60 feet in the air. The main pieces go all the way down to the other side of the crust of the earth. Wow. This is one of the most embedded rock formations that you could ever attach your seismograph and your antenna to. So right now we're sitting right in the middle of it. This is like the spot. Landers was the same geology. It's the exact same geology. These gigantic plutonic boulders, extremely old granites that had been there for longer than any history anyone can even imagine. Just big solid masses of rocks that have been here for like eternity.
These rocks act as antennas into the earth.
Well, if you have a rock that big stuck in the earth, well, that sure makes it a lot easier to hear what's going on, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Not a pile of sand.
So these are natural earth antennas.
Yeah,
rocks.
Mechanically and electrically, because then the dielectric is uniform. It's one continuous dielectric medium in which to propagate waves through.
And you attached your system directly to these natural antennas?
Yeah. You use the roots of the plants as the underground antennas.
The natural living roots of the antennas.
Yeah, because they go down so deep, and it's the only thing you can drive your ground rod into, because the rock is too solid to drive your ground rod, so you let the plant did the start for you. So you drive the ground rod into the center of the best one they use is a creosote bush. Unfortunately, they don't have those around here, so you'd be stuck. You'd have to use something else. A creosote bush is the best. And then the ground rod, follows the path of the root if you're lucky. You're lucky if you can get an 8-foot ground rod in the ground in that kind of environment.
The plant continues to live, right?
Yeah, those things, they're indestructible. And the root goes down between like 90 and 300 feet.
So it's better if the plant lives.
It has to. If the plant dies, the antenna's no good anymore. The plant has to remain alive.
So your earth radio is cooperative with nature, not...
Well, you have to. The plant is the only thing that you have that you can use that acts like a wire. Otherwise, you have to drill that hole. You have to drill a 100-foot deep hole, and then you have to make an electrolytic electrode to go down that hole and make contact with the soil around it. And you can never do it as good as a plant can, because that's the whole plant's way of life. It's grounding. It has the perfect electrode surface. Everything's right. Then you measure it against station ground, and sure enough, in a place where a regular ground rod will give you a resistance of 10,000 ohms, when you use the plant, the resistance is only 100 ohms. And that's acceptable because you usually design your Alexanderson antenna to be 300 ohms. So that's fine. If your antenna impedance is greater than the ground impedance, and about that ratio, that's exactly what you want. It just couples perfectly.
That's the secret of antenna connectivity.
It's no secret. It's just that's how it works. transmission line. The transmission line impedance and the impedances that feed it and draw from it have to have certain proportions or the system doesn't work.
Impedance is like resistance.
Yeah, more generalized resistance. Resistance is part of impedance.
And how are there different kinds of resistance?
Yeah, there's like negative resistance and positive resistance, and there's resistance of like resistors, and there's a resistance of radiation, there's electrolytic resistances, and they can't all be equated.
How about magnetic and dielectric?
Well, then it just goes even further. You know, you could go on forever.
What do you mean?
Well, you only can go so far with this before no one's going to understand anything, or it requires 10-hour-long explanations. So, yeah, I'm not going to get into the whole. I wrote about all that. Go read it.
Which paper?
All of it. The whole thing that I wrote while I was here, just read the whole thing. That's the book on electricity. That's all I can say.